Hi everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. My name's Helena Bennett. I'm a climate justice and human rights activist from London in the UK. And today we're going to be having a conversation about the importance of building bridges and alliances that cut across generations to use as a vehicle for change. So if activism has shown us anything, especially this year, it's that unity, solidarity and strength in the face of urgent issues like the climate crisis and social justice issues is one of the biggest and most empowering change makers that we can use as a tool. And this is why alliances that transcend generations and belief systems, cultures and race are required now more than ever if we're going to succeed in creating a more just and resilient system that puts people and the planet first. So with me today on this panel are some brilliant people that I'm just going to introduce. First, we have Rowan, who is a founding member of Parents for the Future in the UK. Then we have Lourdes, who is an activist and a member of Fridays for Future in Argentina. We have Stanley, who is a political activist from South Africa and was present at the height of apartheid. And we also have Lucy, who is an actress and activist, and she is in New Zealand right now. So thank you all so much for being here. I'd like to start with a fun way of introducing ourselves and for the people on the other side of the screen to get to know you a little bit better. Each of you has been asked to bring an object of value to present to the audience, something that has a story to tell and represents your work and experience and your activism. So we'll start with Lucy. What did you bring?
It's hidden. Hi, I bought this feather because in the New Zealand indigenous culture, in Maori culture, they lay down whenever they meet a new group. Traditionally, they would or visited a meeting house. There would be this process called te wero, where they would lay down. I believe it was always a feather. Could be other objects, I don't know, but generally a feather. And if the visitor picks it up, that means they are accepting the challenge. So I think the best English approximation of te wero is the challenge. And we are about to lay down a challenge to all politicians in New Zealand, and we want them to pick it up. And that is to cut emissions massively by 2030, and that has to start today.
Love that. Thank you so much for sharing. Stanley, how about you? Stanley, I think you're on mute. You might have to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Hi, everybody. I'm Stanley from South Africa. I hail from Soweto. I brought a t-shirt here, which is very close to me. It's written "A Bright Future," and it's got somebody with sunglasses here. A bright future starts with clean energy. And this t-shirt, at the back, we've got Pilile Foundation. Greenpeace partnered with Pilile Foundation. Pilile Foundation has got a crèche, a kindergarten school. It's in the squatter camp that has got no water, no electricity, no services at all. And we decided to partner with Pilile to install solar panels and solar lighting, which helped the little children to do some homework and have no running water and all that, and they benefited a lot for it. That it shows that renewable energy is really working, the solar energy, and we've got a lot of sun in Africa. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very nice story as well. Lourdes, how about you? What did you bring to show us?
Oops, I forgot I was muted too. Hi, I'm Lourdes. I'm from Argentina. I'm from Fridays for Future too. I guess they said it before, but I will say it again because, you know. So anyway, this is kind of messy, but this was my first sign, how you say it in English, I don't know, that I made. It says, no hay planeta number 2. Like, basically, there's no planet 2. I don't know why I say that in Spanish English. It's just like I'm reading in Spanish and I'm saying it in English, so it's kind of confusing. But this is the first one I made, and it brings me so much memories because it's when I first started striking, and I don't know, I have some emotions for this one. It's kind of broken, you can see, because it has like, you know, 2 years, but I feel it represents everything in Argentina because this is what we made as activists here, and we try to make powerful signs so people see us and be like, wow, they are really fighting for a future, or, you know, making some noise. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. I think if I had bought an item, it might have been a sign as well. So yeah, I love that. And finally, Rowan?
Yeah, I was also thinking of bringing signs, but I just moved house and everything's in storage. So the item I brought is paint, which is for 2 reasons. So one is that I think part of my process before any big action has been last minute, late night sign painting, doing some of my kids' art supplies. And that's definitely a feature of my activism. But also I think that creativity has been really important. So the paint has kind of got a symbolic side to it as well. And I think sort of embracing creativity within activism has felt really important over the last couple of years.
Awesome, thank you so much. Yeah, I love the link of stealing your children's paint. So I've got a couple of questions to kick off the panel session. I'd love to hear, Lourdes, what your opinion on the amount of intergenerational influence there is in the climate movement. Do you think you kind of get quite a lot of guidance from older activists, or do you feel like it really is the youth pushing this? And if so, what would you like to see more of in terms of sharing knowledge between different generations?
Well, I think it's a really difficult question to ask, to be honest, but I've been talking with a lot of people. I have friends from Russia that wants to fight for climate change, but they obviously can't because, well, problems there. And they always tell me that they want to fight over the climate change. They tell me about the culture. I also have other friends from Peru and other countries that are older, like they have 80, and they always tell me how amazed they are by people like me that are fighting for the climate change, and that we are the generation that will change everything. He also refers to himself and to his generation, like the generation that destroyed everything. Sorry, I'm repeating generation, but yeah. I feel like now is like a more open world, and all this with the connections and the technology and many other things. I have learned a lot from other people and from other cultures, and how they do their activism, and how it's really important to get to know other people, but to also understand their problems that are not the same of yours. And yes, I feel like in this generation, you know, is more open that, and we get to know each other more. And at least in Fridays for Future, I see that a lot. Like, you enter to the movement and everyone feels you like you're at home, and makes you feel like happy, and like, let's fight with this together. And for example, I don't want to be too like long, but some months ago Argentina was on fire, and I was really sad because one of my favorite parks burned out, and a lot of friends from other part of the world, they were like supporting me. And even though they couldn't be here with me, hugging me, and because of the pandemic and everything, it really helped me to be like safe, and to feel like I'm not alone, and everybody's fighting for this. It's not just me. So I feel like intergenerational activism is really important. I'm sorry for my English, but yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, but
you did, yeah, and your English is brilliant. Yeah, kind of similar question to Rowan, I guess, as a parent and being aware of the climate crisis. How do you, from now and going forward, plan on sharing knowledge and sharing the ways that you participate in activism with the younger generation?
So I think there's two sides to it, and it's really nice to hear from you, Lourdes, and from kind of within Fridays for Future about how generations can work together in a way that supports the youth activism. Because I think it's really important to let youth-led movements be youth-led, and to kind of allow the youth-led groups to shine and to do some of the fantastic work that they've been doing. But a lot of the work that I've been doing with Parents for Future has been engaging parents in activism. So it's been using the perspective of the fact that my children will be affected by climate change. Undoubtedly, that's going to be a really big feature that's going to determine large parts of their future. And a lot of adults don't get that yet. And once you do get that, it's very hard to look away from it, and it's very hard to not engage. And although parents come from all walks of life and all political affiliations, the love for your children is something that really unifies people, and that desire to leave a legacy for your children and to leave a kind of a more positive future for your children is something that really cuts across political groups. And so I think there's a huge amount of potential there in using the intergenerational perspective to engage adults in activism. So that's a large part of the work I've been doing.
Can I ask? I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Can I ask what challenges you're experiencing in engaging adults? Because, I mean, I would have thought this was such a no-brainer, and the mothers of the world should have jumped on this a decade ago. I'm really like, I feel hurt. I feel hurt that they have not been able to digest what this means for their own children and in our lifetime. So what are you experiencing, and what's the challenges in engaging parents?
So for the last couple of years, we've been building the movement and working out how to work together across different countries and across different communities. And that's taken quite a lot of just figuring out how we can do that, and how kind of internally within the movement we can build a movement that feels strong enough to work together. We need to get better at communicating this perspective for sure. We haven't got the platforms that we need yet. And so I'm really glad to see more people taking an interest in this kind of intergenerational perspective on climate activism, because I think there's a huge amount of communication potential there. I think a lot of parents are, particularly at the moment, are feeling completely overwhelmed and are sort of unwilling to take on another existential crisis. And so you have to communicate it in a way that people are able to hear it, and different people are able to hear that message in different ways at different times. So I think there's a lot of challenges in how you communicate it, and interesting techniques that you can use around sort of peer-to-peer communication, because at the moment particularly people are not really trusting the media, but they will trust their friends and they will trust people that they know. So I think there's a lot of interesting ways that you can kind of work through parent networks and through adult networks to get that perspective out there. But it feels like it hasn't really sparked yet. I'm hopeful that next year is going to be the year when the adults really rise alongside the youth movements. And I feel that is needed and hopefully is coming.
Thanks so much, Rowan. Stanley, a question for you. I'd love to know where you've seen examples of how intergenerational participation has helped with movements and campaigns that you've been part of, whether it's the kind of generation above you or the generation below you. I think you're on mute, Stanley. Stanley, I think you're still on mute.
Is that okay now?
Yes, got you.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I was saying it's about telling our stories to the younger generation, and the reason why we did the things the way we did them, and then allow them to tell their own story, where they want to go and how they want to do it, because we cannot tell them how to do things and then we can look at ways, the way they want to do things, what motivates them, and look at it the way we did our own things, because the era was different. And yeah, that will help us, come to some kind of one common, way of doing things. It's all about telling our own stories and why we want to do things the way we think.
Thank you. So, Lucy, I think you're part of a intergenerational climate project in New Zealand, right? Do you mind telling us a little bit more about what you're doing and what you've succeeded with so far?
Yeah, success, it's a different thing, but you've just got to be in the fight, don't you? And this little group, I'm aligned with Greenpeace, and they have my heart, really. I have such deep abiding respect for them, and I know them for the last 25 years, 30 years. Anyway, but this little group was begun by Jim Salinger, who is a 74-year-old climate scientist who's actually been trying to tell New Zealand and the world that this is happening since 1975. And out of such love and respect for him, I said, well, how can I help? So he arranged to go to Parliament, right, to our government house yesterday, and it's the last day that Parliament is sitting. And all the members of Parliament just want to go on holiday. It's their last day. Their heads are on going to the beach for Christmas, because that's what you do in New Zealand. And we're saying, no, 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 because the climate emergency does not take a holiday. And somewhere a drought is slouching towards Otago, the south of New Zealand, in this La Nina weather pattern. The drought is going to be more in the south and the west, which is not typical for New Zealand. Usually it's the east and the north. But we suffer terribly from drought because of the agriculture, and that's a whole other contributor to our emissions. Anyway, so we had to get younger people than us, because who the hell wants to listen to us anymore? We're kind of part of the problem, our way of thinking and the rules around our culture that is rooted in last century. So the biggest stakeholders in climate change activism actually is the youngest among us, right? So we were very, very blessed to be able to have 3 young, really talented activist stars in New Zealand come with us. Fili Fepuliai, who is Pacifica, she's Samoan, and talking about the very specific problems that the islands are facing, and the exploitation that she was talking about, how their countries, the bones of her ancestors are literally spread on our farms because their islands and the sea around them in the Pacific were mined in the 1900s and used as fertilizer in New Zealand. So our economy is based on their land and the bones of their ancestors, literally. So now that the seas are rising up and infiltrating the freshwater lenses and causing these atoll cultures to move to other countries, they are saying we will not be refugees coming to, don't offer us the hand of a place to stay as refugees in your land. You owe us to curb your emissions so that we may go on living as we always have. And that was really powerful. And there's a young Maori girl who speaks fluent te reo, is the Maori language, Maya Wijon, and she's from a real incredible activist family, and she spoke about the anxiety that youth are facing. Anyway, so I found that the people who came from Polynesian and Maori culture are actually better representatives for this, because I'm trying to figure out why, and it might be because they're not so rule bound. Certainly my generation of white people, Pākehā in New Zealand, were raised to be seen and not heard. That was what we heard as children. So we were not encouraged to tell our own story or even identify our own story. We had to fit into this external paradigm of who we were, by the rules, be a nice girl, be respectable, be agreeable, all that stuff, which is not helpful today. So I'm having to unlearn all my programming. And these kids are showing me how, because they are so story-based, and they know where they've come from, and they know what has happened to them, and they have kept the lineage, like the history is their story, and they are telling it. So they're so much more powerful as activists, in my opinion, in my experience. And they have to own their movement, because to have a bunch of white people in New Zealand going, this is what we have to do, really does not correlate to their experience at all. So having them be part of the decision making is absolutely crucial. So
amazing. That's a great story. Thank you so much for sharing. I guess I'm going to pose another question to all of you. You kind of answered it yourself, I guess, there a little bit, Lucy. But before we move on to the next section of the panel, I'd love to ask you if you could all maybe give like a quick 1 or 2 line answer. Why you think that in more recent years, socio-environmental movements and campaigns are being led more and more by young people, and increasingly young people as well, going to climate campaigns and protests in London, often seeing pre-teens almost there, people aged 12, 13. So I'd love to hear just a quick one-liner from all of you about why you think that might be, and whether or not you think it's a good way of getting involved in activism at such a young age. Maybe Rowan, we start with you.
Sure. I think Lucy has started to answer that beautifully. I think that my generation particularly is not, in the UK anyway, it's not a particularly political generation. I grew up in a very stable government time. There wasn't much protest on the street, and it wasn't really part of my youth and my upbringing. And I think that's the same for many adults in the UK, is that protest is seen that other people do. It's not something that's sort of seen as a normal activity. And I think there's almost a conflict, or a perceived conflict, between the identity of somebody who is an activist and the identity of somebody who is a parent. And I think that we really need to question that, and really need to think carefully about what it means to kind of engage for your children's future. And I think activism does need to be part of that, but it's not often perceived that that is something that adults, professional adults of good standing, would want to engage in street activism. So there's a need to both look at activism of different kinds. There's lots of ways you can be an activist. It doesn't have to be going out on the street and protest, but also to think about the fact that this is really necessary in this current situation in the climate.
Yeah, totally agree. Stanley, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that more younger people must get into activism once they're young, because they are the future citizens, and the older guys can just guide them through. But the more they get into it, the better. That's what I can.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. And Lourdes?
Well, since I said that I have a lot of people from every age, in Fridays for Future is really difficult, because at least people from, I will talk about Latin America because it's what I know the best. Here we have crisis through crisis, and crisis. It never stopped, the crisis. We always have crisis. So sometimes it was really difficult to people to understand these all things about climate change and how important it is to act when they had problems like social economic things, like they always thought that was the most important thing than, whatever that is environmentalism. Like my government right now in Argentina still thinks that. They think that it's better to make money than to, protect our planet or healthy or whatever. They clearly didn't care about that. But, my parents, I put this explanation of my parents. They always tell me like, oh, I would like to fight for the climate change, but I'm too old. And I'm like, you're only 40. You have 40 years more years in this planet. What are you gonna do in that? And I have more people that is older than that and say the same thing. Like, we are all, even if you have 1 year more in this planet, why you won't fight for it? Like, even for your children or the people that is living on this planet, like, it's your place where you're living. Like, you should always fight for your planet. Like, it's like your home, you know? And I feel like people here, like parents and people over 30, do not understand that. So that's why we always have really young people in their 20s or, you know, teenage and stuff, because we really understand the situation and we want a future and we want to fight for a future. So yeah.
Love that. And as a young-ish person, I totally agree. And yeah, Lucy, just coming to you quickly last, I mean, you said in the answer to your last question about particularly people owning the movement. I don't know if you have anything else to add, but yeah, I loved that idea.
Yeah, well, they have just brought so much energy, and it was, I remember like more than 10 years ago saying, why don't we go to the churches, the Polynesian churches in New Zealand, tell, you know, make sure that everybody understands what's happening to their islands and getting them on side. And the answer I got was that because religion is very, very strong, that there's very much a feeling that, oh, don't worry, Jesus will take care of it. And that's challenging in many communities. But I really think that God has given us brains to support, to fix problems. So I don't think that should be counter to any religion, any religious belief. That action is and honoring creation surely is part of honoring God, right? Because the loss of any single species, that last little bug that disappears forever, that's a crime against creation. To me, that's a crime against God. So I'm very upset about it. I'm 52 years old, and my biological purpose is done. My children are grown. My only reason for existing now is to take care of, I guess evolutionarily would have been the grandchildren, right? So I don't have any grandchildren. My only reason for existing now is to take care of the young and set them up for a great adulthood. And I know I'm going to be dedicated to that for the rest of my life with an increasing intensity as we face challenges. You know, I'm ready. I'm ready for next year to. I'm really pissed. That's all I can say.
Yeah, love the passion. Thank you so much. So we're moving into another part of the panel. We've got about 10 minutes left. So what we're going to do is get the different panelists to ask each other questions. We're going to start with Lourdes, who's going to be asking Rowan, and we will go around in a little circle. Over to you, Lourdes.
Okay. So my question for you is, like, you know that there's a lot of people that start activism, but being parents for future, I feel like it's a really harder work than just, being an activist. So what was the thing, what was, like, I don't know, whatever you saw, you heard, or whatever that made your heart feel like you have to help with this and to be part of this? What makes you become like a parent for future?
So I think it's a really personal journey for everybody, and I think that everybody will come to activism in a different way. For me personally, it was a combination of lots of different things coming together at the same time in autumn 2018, which was my eldest child started school at that time. She turned 5 and started school, and that forced me to look ahead into her future and look at what was coming down the line for her. And so that got me into kind of long-term thinking, which I think is something that we're very bad at and decision makers are particularly terrible at. And that made me think about her future. Plus the IPCC report came out, which was really important in getting a lot of people engaged, I think, around climate, and the timeframes in that really focused the mind. The number of years in there made me realize, before my kids are grown, this is going to be an issue that needs dealing with. We can't leave this to the next generation to deal with. We need to engage as adults now. And then the school strike movement, Fridays for Future, started. So you and your wonderful comrades in Fridays for Future were a big part of me and the Parents for Future movement setting up, and realizing that actually if young people are brave enough to do this work, to take to the streets as activists, then we should be brave enough too, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's not something that we want to do. This is something that we have to do. So to be able to step outside of our comfort zone. So Fridays for Future was a big factor for me personally, and I think for a lot of parents, in encouraging us to engage. So thank you.
Yes, I'm so happy you guys are part of that, Lucy and Rowan, helping on all that. Like, it literally makes me so happy.
Thank you.
And I think, Rowan, you have a question for Stanley?
Yeah, so Stanley, I'm really interested to hear more about your work in South Africa. I've met many fantastic activists from South Africa, and I know that there are some wonderful groups there and a lot that's been learnt from a lot of the apartheid activism there. And I'd be really interested to hear about how that worked in intergenerational terms, whether you had all ages working together within the apartheid movement, and how that worked in practice, and whether there were issues or tensions there and lessons that we can learn for the climate movements.
Yeah, I don't know whether I got your question correctly. How does it work? It's because we form a partnership with other groupings. So we have workshops and talk about stuff, and then tell them the history where we come from, because most of us, we had the common problems, and then we highlight what has been, how we got about it, where we went wrong, and all that. And most of the youngsters are also inspired by older generation, and we have, I don't know how to put it. Yeah, but yeah, it's by interaction most, I would say, yes.
Thank you. Did you have lots of ages working together, kind of side by side within the apartheid movements when you were part of that movement?
Yes, yeah.
That's what we need.
Fab. And Stanley, do you have a question for Lucy?
Lucy, do you work with other organizations as well?
Really, just Greenpeace as an organization. And I can feel myself gearing up for some big stuff next year. So I know they're listening. They'll be signing me up.
I'm sure
I'm into it.
I'm sure there are other organizations that do the same work as you do. Sometimes, partner with those.
Oh, yes. That's the great thing. What's happening now is that there's a massive drop in ego, is what I'm feeling, where everybody is holding hands, sharing resources, sharing information, making sure they don't double up, but support one another so that we are working for a common good. And that's the one great thing about, if we globalize anything, it should be the common good, right? So I really feel that people aren't just trying to own any part of activism. So
Fab. And Lucy, do you have a question for Lourdes?
Lourdes, what are the laws like in terms of protest in Argentina? Are you free to protest as you wish? Do you? Yeah, that's it.
Well, it depends, like, I feel like police in Argentina, how they're feeling, it depends, because here we have a lot of corruption. So there is people that it depends of what political party they are allowed to, not strike. It's not strike, like manifest themselves in the street, but sometimes they see like we are really pacific. We don't stop, like we don't stand in the middle of the street or anything. We don't want to cause a disaster. on the city or anything, we just stand with the, you know, with the signs here and be like, hey, we're here and we want that someone see us, but we don't cause any kind of disaster. But police sometimes, just because they feel superior to us, they be like, no, you have to go to your home, no, you don't got to do this, and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of people that have been arrested this year because of the pandemic. But they just put in an excuse to that, just to, you know, put someone in jail. And that's really disgusting for me. But like, now we are organizing the strike of the 11th of the December, now Friday, and we are all hoping to be doing that, but there's no any kind of restriction right now. Before there was, like, when in May, June, July, there was like really heavy, the coronavirus and everything. But now if we want to strike, we can do it, but police can still like stop us or arrest us or anything. But we are not going to stop because we really need to fight for our planet. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Lourdes. It's so interesting hearing about how different places around the world participate in activism, and especially protesting, and all the different rules and regulations you have to follow. So we're out of time. Thank you all so much for being part of this panel. I hope everybody who's watching at home has enjoyed it and learned something. Really sorry about the technical difficulties earlier, but I think we overcame them. And yeah, thank you all so much, and have a great evening or morning wherever you are, and stay safe.
Thank you. And to all those beautiful people online watching,
Thank
your
Thank you, guys. So happy to be here.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
you.